So I just wanted to talk about this idea of diversity in relation to mind viral immunity and then also to psychosomatic immunity. It's something I was thinking about at the moment, so I thought I would make the connection because in the body work, I also tried to focus on this aspect. So I like to use networks as a way to represent things, and they provide very useful and interesting metaphors. I just want to show three types of networks, actually. So there is one that is, in this case, for example, a very disconnected one. It's a social network. It's an example of a social network on Twitter. So when you want to spread some information through this network, the best way to do it is to start here, and then it will go to these clusters, this cluster, maybe here also. But it will be very hard for the information to travel here or here. So if you're part of this social network, you know that it's not going to synchronize very well because it's disconnected. Then you have another example of a network that looks like this. So it's almost too interconnected. And here, if you start sending a message, for example, from here, it will very quickly go to all the different parts of the network. And they say that this kind of interconnected networks are very easy to synchronize. So the more connected the things are, the easier for them to sync. But it might also mean that they're very susceptible to external influence because any information, any idea that comes through, they spread it instantly, very quickly, and information doesn't live too long inside. And so in the study of social networks, there is also this idea that the most stable structures is something that looks like this, which is connected and interconnected and not connected at the same time. So it has this distinct islands of activity, like here. And these are separate clusters. Information can travel through them, but they're not too interconnected. So the network is not going to sync too fast, and it's not going to be too susceptible. So it's kind of adaptive and resilient, and at the same time, it's connected. And I hope it makes sense so far. Yeah, cool. And what I like to think is how to apply the same metaphor from the context of mind viral immunity, because when we talk about groups of people, I think it's pretty evident that this is how it would work, but how we could apply it into the realm of ourselves. So for example, our psychology, our body, how to make it open enough that it can be receptive to the outside world, and at the same time not open too much so it doesn't take everything in. And I found a lot of interesting research on the subject also, where the basic idea is that the more variability there is in your pattern of movement, of life, of rhythm, the more adaptive you are. If there is too much of that, it's going to turn into chaos, it's going to be too unpredictable. So there has to be a combination of a certain rhythm, like a continuous rhythm. So we can say that a rhythm can be represented by us being in a certain stage. Let's say maybe this is like slow and relaxed, and this is fast and tense, and this is something in between. And if we navigate between these three different states, then our system will be resilient and adaptive enough, and at the same time we have the connection between all these different ways of doing things. So when we do the body work with EightOS, I also try to kind of like focus on this aspect a little bit and to see how we can create a body state where we're modular in the structure. So there are body parts that can move independently from one another. If I move my head or I move my arm, it can work on its own. And at the same time, there is also some possibility to connect all of these body parts together. So we can always have a choice that they can be connected, or they can also be on their own, but still in relation to each other. So this is kind of like the theoretical framework I like to think in at the moment. And the stuff that I wanted to focus on today are actually very much related to this approach. So we can begin a little bit. Let's start from just standing up in space and aligning your body in a way that you observe what is your tendency to stand. So for example, let's say you stand and you see that you're, for example, leaning too much like that, or maybe in the front. So try to find some kind of neutral position of how your body would be standing if it was hanging up from the floor. So what would it be like standing if it's hanging up from the floor? Okay, so hanging upwards, connecting with your feet to the ground, and scanning yourself through to observe if there are any tensions anywhere that arise in your system. So do you feel any tensions anywhere? If you do, then just letting go, releasing them into the ground. And then at some point, sending an impulse into the ground and letting your body come up as a reaction. So it kind of looks like shaking, but what you're actually doing is that you're sending the impulse as a reaction, and then you come up. So you're sending the impulse into the floor, coming up as a reaction a few times. So the shaking starts from you sending impulses into the ground. Okay. And then swinging your arms like this. So you're still pushing into the floor. As a reaction, your arms come up. So this is just to relax the body and to find this connection between the floor, the legs, and the upper part, so that your whole body becomes like a wire for all these physical impulses to travel through. So let's try to do it a few times. And you can also focus on your breathing. So at the same time as you're doing these movements, you also have independent but connected process of breathing. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth. And it's like these two processes, they have two different rhythms. So you have the rhythm of breathing, which is one rhythm, and the rhythm of swinging your arms, which is another. So you're already working on having these multiple processes active in your body. Okay, continuing to breathe, stopping the movement, but you're continuing to breathe in the same way. And now let's start to rotate our head. So your breathing stays the same, and you're just rotating your head in a circle around its axis, changing direction, breathing. Okay, and then shifting to your shoulder, so rotating the shoulder, making like an 8 with the shoulder as if you're drawing it like this with your shoulder blade. And then changing the shoulder to the other one. Breathing, so having separate processes that are still connected. Your breath, which has a constant rhythm, whatever feels comfortable to you, and your movement. Okay, and then let's spread the arms to the sides and twist them in one direction and in the other. And you can sometimes squat and try to feel a very important thing in the body. I'm going to take a focus on that, just how we saw these networks that can be really interconnected. For me, the analogy with the body is that when it's like in one block, so you affect the block in one part and the block is directly responding in another. If you have your body made of independent parts, one part can still affect the other, but it's not working anymore in blocks. There is some time and space for things to travel. So let's try also when we do the exercise. For example, you can experiment also on your own, but what I like to do is to start the rotation in the ground and give a little bit of time and space for the movement to travel up into the shoulders, so that there is always this kind of time delay. The feet, the legs, they start the movement, and then it happens in the arms again. Breathing. So you have this kind of modular structure of the body, the different distinct parts connected, but not too connected, so that there is some time and space delay between them. Breathing. Okay, now let's do a wave-like motion with the arms. So you just let them hang, and then you imagine that your arm is like a whip or like a chain, and that you're sending it in the front, but the movement starts from the ground and then goes in your hips and then reveals itself in your shoulder, and then like a whip, it's your elbow that follows, and then it's your wrist. So really try and focus on this tuk, 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 one by one, and then it opens up. So let's try to make this movement. Breathing. Okay, making it smaller and faster, internalizing the movement. Okay, now let's rotate the chest. So we start rotating it in the front. We open it up like a convex, and then going backwards, closing it, and opening again. So we create this kind of rotation. opening up when you're in the front, closing in the back. And then changing direction. Okay, changing direction again. Changing direction again. And again, it's this kind of modular system. Your legs are almost not moving. It's only your upper part which is being active now, even though the movement it travels through the legs. So they can still conduct the impulse from the ground, but they don't have to be moving. So it's interesting to try to focus on that. Okay, making it smaller and internalizing it, but keeping the sensation inside the body. You can also make this image. We will now do the same exercise with the hips, where you can try to work with a different image that you imagine you have like a ball inside your hips, and then you start to gradually move it. And because it's moving inside, it's also touching on the outer layers of your body, and it makes your body move. So you start from rotating that ball inside, letting it touch the inside surface of your body. And as you do that, you kind of increase the amplitude. And so the movement starts to happen more and more. Moving the hips, then changing direction. And making the movement smaller and faster. So it's like the ball is moving faster and smaller. And then changing direction from the small into bigger again. And again, making it bigger, the movement. So really working on that. And then let's try to make one turn and a half with the hips, 1 turn and a half with the chest, 1 turn and a half, 1 turn and a half. So you can detect, for example, you start on your right side, you go 1 full circle and a half to the left side, and then your chest ends up on the right side, and then you move 1 full circle left, the hips on the right, and so on. Changing direction. Okay, nice. Internalizing it, feeling these rotating motions. And then let's try to work on this, that you focus on the point of contact of your feet with the floor, and you imagine that you made out of 3 discs. You have 1 disc, which is your feet. Another disc is here on the level of your waist. And then another level is the level of your neck. And try to imagine that those 3 layers are stacked on top of each other so they can move independently. So for example, if you move and rotate in your ankles, they stay fixed there, but the body moves. And then, for example, try to rotate just with your upper body on the level of your waist. So your legs are almost fixed, but your upper body moves. And then it's just your neck. So the rest of the body is fixed, and this moves on top as if it was like stacked on top of this structure, and it's moving. And then trying to alternate, so sometimes you make more movement in your heels, sometimes it's in your waist, and sometimes it's in your head. I'm just going to look a little bit to see how it's going. Nice. So really trying to focus a little bit on not making your hips go out of center and staying like in one block, but with all these independent parts. So maybe Natasha, you can also try to swing the body less and more kind of like fixed center. So not moving out of the axis, but rather keeping the axis and moving the body parts on top of this axis. So moving around like this, very nice. And then let's start to walk around the space a little bit, but when you want to turn, try to have the sensation that you don't turn how you normally would, maybe by making an intention and turning, but you make a step, then you push into the ground and you rotate on this disc, and then again, rotation, rotation. And sometimes it's your head that rotates first, so the first top disc, and then the rest follows. Sometimes it's your waist that rotates the first. So trying to find how you can give yourself this rotative impulse as you're walking in space. Yeah, so there is like a very subtle element here that when you rotate, you want to push into the floor. I'm going to exaggerate now to show that you push into the floor. As a reaction, your body turns in the opposite direction, and this is where you go. So let's try to find that, but not exaggerating so much, rather just going like push, go there, push, go there. I push with my foot here into the floor, go there. And I imagine that the body is made out of these 3 discs. If at any point of the session you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat if something is not clear. And then we will also have in the end a Q&A session with the voice on in case something is not clear. But now let's just try to walk, and also let's bring the focus back to our breath. So as we're walking, let's find some connection between the breathing and the steps. So for example, let's say 2 steps inhale, 2 steps exhale. So you inhale on 2 steps, exhale on 2 steps. Trying to keep your body always vertical and always changing direction. Sometimes initiating the turn with your head. So you're walking, your head turns somewhere, and then it takes you somewhere. Or sometimes it's from your feet turn, and then the rest of the body follows. So try to find these different body parts initiating the movement at different moments of time. So now you have this connectedness of your breath and movement, hopefully. You're walking, you're breathing, 2 steps inhale, 2 steps exhale. You can make 3 steps inhale, 3 steps exhale. And now you're like this interconnected network, ready to sync and to mobilize for an action, but maybe also very focused on the interconnectedness, so it would not be so open to external influence here. Let's stand again in the center, just to switch to the next one. And now let's try to make this exercise that you're drawing a flower on the floor. So if I show you on the screen, it kind of goes like this. You're trying to make these kind of movements, but on the floor horizontally with your hip and with your foot. So you go like this, kind of making semicircles on the floor with your hip and with your foot. And then changing the leg and the direction. And then going in both directions. So you're moving like an 8. You actually start going in one, and then you just transfer the movement into the other. So eventually it looks like you're making an 8 horizontally with your hips. Nice. And with this, it's very easy also to try to do like a crab walk. So you can walk sideways like this, on the right, on the left, in the front. So try to change position, maintaining this kind of 8-like fluidity. And also feel free to sometimes make a step. So it's kind of like a combination of the exercise that we just did before, where we walked and turned, but now we try to have this slight 8-like sensation in the hips. And try to surprise yourself as to which directions you turn into. So turning in all these different directions. Feeling these 3 stacked discs on top of each other, your head, your upper body, your legs, and having this wave-like sensation. And your breath, either independent from the movement, so having its own constant rhythm. The main thing is not to stop breathing and not to make it too susceptible to the rhythm of your movement. So you try to keep your breath in one rhythm and your movement in the other. Okay, make it small again, internalize. So when we stop doing an exercise, it's not like we are completely, even if we did it and we stop and it's gone, it's more like you let it enter into your system. So if I was walking like this and then I stop, I try to still keep on walking inside of myself. So this is the idea, to just keep this physicality, just not expressing it, but it stays inside. That's why I like, for example, after any physical session, yoga, whatever, the feeling after actually when you come out, because you have it inside the body, you're not doing it actively anymore, and it feels great to try to interact with the world in a different way. So now let's also do one more with the hand. So we try to make some kind of spiral rotation. You start from here, you put your arm, your hand in front of you, and then you start turning it in and then out. So you make some kind of movement like this. It doesn't have to be too precise, just for you to feel the spiral wave, changing direction. then changing your arm, trying to do it with the other one. Watch what happens to the rest of your body. So it's nice if it's not engaged at all. It just feels the impulses traveling through, but for example, there is no unnecessary tension or no swinging on the other side. It's just isolated and stopped, but connected. Okay, nice. So keeping the movement inside. Now let's do one last warm-up one where you kind of swing your leg in the front. You can use a wall if you have one to support yourself or not. And then you kind of like as if you do this exercise with the arms, but now it's with the legs. You send it front, back, and then front and back again, and do it continuously. So you also feel this time and space in the leg, no? That it doesn't just go like a block in the front, but it travels through the whole body. Like unfolds, folds again, unfolds, folds again. Breathing. Okay, let's change the leg. Okay, nice. Okay, let's now try to connect all of these movements together. So what we can try to do now is that you start just with whatever movement you like. So for example, your head. By the way, maybe it also makes sense to switch to the gallery view on your screen before you start it so you can see the other people moving, because we will use each other's images to get some inspiration to communicate physically. So you start from whatever body part you want to start from. Maybe it's your head, maybe it's your arm, maybe it's your leg, maybe it's some exercise you wanted to do but you didn't. And then you move it for a while. For example, I start with my arm. I'm just moving my arm. Maybe it's a head for someone else. Maybe it's the leg for somebody else. And you stay in this island. So imagine we're working on this kind of network-like connections. So now it's one part of the network. It's the arm. And also if you think of yourself in space, you're also at one point in space. It's one body part now. Your arm, your leg, your head, whatever it is. Then transfer the movement to the other one. So maybe it's your other arm, maybe from the leg it goes into your head, whatever. Find some new body part to make the movement with. Do it for a while, breathe. Have your rhythm of breathing always the same, no matter what we do. Later it's going to be more important even. Then it's your head, for example, now. And then just freely switching from one part to another. So kind of repeating all the warm-up exercises we did, but shifting between them. Like you arrive to one station, you stay there for a moment, then you go to another one. Stay there, move on, or switch quick. Doesn't matter. Let's just combine all the different movements together. We have the spiral with the hand, the leg, the twist and sit. So let's combine them together. Breathe. Focus that even though your movements are changing, your breath always stays the same rhythm. Now we try to introduce also some variability into the, not only into the body parts that we move, but also in the quality of the movement. So let's sometimes move slow. So you're moving normal, and then slow down for a moment. Stay in the slow move, so we're changing again. And then accelerate and very fast. But make sure that your breathing stays the same rhythm. And then again, slow. Finding the connections in the body, exploring them. Feeling these waves also. And switching between the different speeds. Sometimes you move normal, sometimes it's like a moment of fast, sometimes slow. And focus on your breathing rhythm and also on keeping your body together in one entity. So the body doesn't go out of balance. You're always in control of the situation, but you're opening up to the different physicalities. Breathing. Okay, and I'm gradually going to put some music on. And you can continue moving. Sound, and also observing how people move, and sometimes copying and pasting the movement into your system. Just a glimpse, so you don't have to watch someone for a long time. You just take a glimpse, copy and paste the movement into your system, stay with it like an inspiration, and then go back to yourself or shift to somebody else. Speeds, sometimes slow, fast. Also play with tension and release. So sometimes you move with a lot of tension inside the body, and sometimes it's like super light and released. So we're really just trying to create variety on every level. Speed, tension, the part of the body that you're moving, the intention you're having, even the position in space. So for example, if you find yourself moving around too much, try to stay in one place. If you're in one place too much, try to move around. Those of you who worked with the floor or with the wall. You can also include that. Exploring the connections in the body, the waves, the different physicalities, moods. Taking inspiration from some movement you see on the screen sometimes, integrating it into your system, moving with it. Tension, release, slow, fast. Feeling the connections between the different body parts, how the movement happens from the floor, the time and space in the body it takes to make the movement happen. Waves, spirals. Okay, gradually bringing it back into the center, internalizing the movement so it kind of stays inside. Even though you're stopped, it's kind of happening on a very minimal scale inside. Breathing.